Hi everyone, and welcome back to Advancing with Watercolor. I'm Gary Tucker. This week we're continuing our work on skies. We're looking at a really beautiful time of day, the golden hour. It's when the sky is illuminated, the sun has just gone down or is going down, and everything is a warm hue, brilliant colors, deep shadows, all that fun stuff. I've created a PDF file that explains this project in detail, and this is the image that I'm going to be using as we go forward. So let's pick up our brushes and head over to the watercolor table. Okay, I'm going to add just a few trees here. I want to start with highlights that go through the steps, the process of building up the first layer of the golden hour. And you can see I've mixed up a lot of yellow ochre, a little bit of cadmium yellow, and on top of the drawing I'm starting to create the background or the underpainting. I'm using a lot of the warmer hues, cadmium orange, yellow ochre, a little bit of burnt sienna here and there, and I'm kind of focused on that light patch that's on the upper left side of the painting. This is where eventually the sun is kind of emanating. And in the this whole sequence is built up of these warm colors, placing them, watching how they move, trying to build up a subtle change from left to right, top to bottom. And there'll be a break where the field begins and the grasses and foreground take over in the lower part. Here I'm washing in a bit more of that cadmium orange and a little bit of cadmium yellow to, again, create sort of an emanating light from above and bring out some of the light areas on the top of the grasses that are in the midground. This doesn't take very long. It's just a warm underpainting that isolates a couple of areas. So we let this dry. Now let's do this in real time and paint this section together. All right. I have a nice spritzer. I have a paper towel. Usually keep that in my left hand. I'm going to start with this bigger mop brush. Some yellow ochre. That's not pure yellow ochre, but it's got, a nice yellow content. A little bit of cadmium yellow. Gives it a little extra brightness. Water. Tiny bit of jaune brilliant. So I'm going to imagine the sun is here. So I'm going to create a gradient that kind of moves outward from that direction. There is a very bright area through here as well. So the gradient is going to be darker on this side, bright through here, kind of a glowing color is the goal. So let's create that first with this warm hue. We'll start just below that bright area and start to carry it down. And I'll just take some water here and start to work it up and sort of around this area that's going to be sort of very, very bright, like this. So it's sort of glowing through here. We can dilute the pigment a little bit too. And it's even very, very bright as it comes down to meet our field. But around, we'll introduce more of this yellow ochre, little cadmium yellow. Start to build up around that area somewhat. Just water through here. Really only need it on the periphery. Sort of a vignette. And through the middle, we keep it very pale. Like this. And then let's bring it into the foreground. More of that yellow ochre, a little bit of orange, a little bit of burnt sienna. And come right across here. And creating just a little brightness through here. As it comes forward, I'm going to get a little darker, creating another sort of gradient. Here. Just a little brighter through here. Just this once more. Oops. Get too warm or too dark up here. Something like that, where we feel the sun emanating in a circular fashion. One more touch in the foreground. Just gonna go right through here. Little burnt sienna, little cad orange. So we have that nice glowing hue behind everything. Two large washes that we're trying to manipulate a little bit before we walk away. Just going to use a little more of this through here. I'm just painting atmosphere at this point, trying to create this glowing distance. Not painting objects yet, just the sort of atmosphere. Okay, I think at this point we step away, let it dry. All right, I want to go through the highlights of what we're going to do in the second section. The second section itself is much more involved. We're working on dry paper, and we're working with some recognizable forms and darker colors. It starts off by mixing up a deep green that's going to be used throughout creating this large tree that's rising up against the sun. And I'm using a brush that's a favorite of mine. It's kind of a raggedy mop brush, but it gives me those textures that you're seeing along the edges of the tree, which to me create a little bit of shimmer, a little bit of interest. And I'm using this to build up the volume of the tree. It's a very flat application. In other words, the color does not change much until I return to it and start to add some darks into the middle part or wash away some of the top part. Adding detail now with a smaller mop brush, the same pigment, but I'm much more conscious of the openings that have appeared and the branches that are suggested, and shaping this tree to sort of a final state. As I'm going through the sun that's emanating on the top, I'm trying to use as much dry brush as possible so that the marks themselves sort of break up and feel as though they're being dissolved by the sun that's coming through. And then I step back and have a look at it and move on to the lower section where I'm building up some deeper shadow colors. In the shadow color, I want to sort of join the feeling of the shadow to the tree that's above it so that it feels like one passage. So the darks are very similar in tonality, very close in tonality. I'm using the same brush that you notice as I run out of pigment, it kind of frays and gives me a brush that is useful in creating the texture of grass. Once I get the initial shadow placed, I start to refine it with some additional color, and then I start to extend it, as you see here with the smaller brush, into the fencing. So all this becomes, in essence, one big shape, from tree to shadow to the fence. And this is designed so that it compresses the light that's behind and makes it more of a filtered light, more of a backlight. While I've been doing this, the painting is still dry and I can return to the background. And I'm not doing it as one solid application, but rather stopping short of the tree and focusing on sort of that glowing color that would be around the edge of an object as the sun is coming through. So I'm trying to create a bit of a halo or glowing color around the edge of the tree as I create this background. So it's a smooth application on the right side, a graded application on the right side, but when I get close to the tree, I stop a little short and try to capture that light that's making the edge of the tree glow. And to affect the graded wash, I turn it on its side and add a little color or add a little spray just to make it a little darker on the right side. This helps with the sense that the light is coming from behind the tree and growing darker as it reaches to the periphery. Well, now I want to add some trees to the background. I'm going to use, again, the same brush and just create a flat green that emulates the shapes of the trees. I realize that in the photograph they're more shaded, there's highlights, but for this painting I feel it's important to keep it flat, just so they resonate as distant trees and don't attract us too much. At the same time, this application lets me exaggerate that light color that's around my tree, that brighter hue. It's also just easier to do it this way and focus on the shapes that are coming out of those trees. Well, it's the detail stage, and I want to add a few details to make the tree feel a little brighter. I'm adding some Jaune Brilliant to the top of the fence and some to the side of the tree, and that's really going to finish off this painting. All right, everyone, let's pick up the brushes, pick up the colors, and let's paint along in this second section. The painting is dried off, and that nice gradient remains. I'm pleased with that. I'm going to now build the tree and start to return to this focal area, start to establish that. To mix the dark that I'm using for the tree, I'm again borrowing from my warm hues. I'll be mixing a little bit of this hooker green, deep hooker green, a little orange, yellow, a little bit of black. Let's just start, with a kind of almost like a statement that this is going to be our center of interest right here, our focal point. And we'll build out from that. I'm using my kind of specialty brush. This brush is older, has a lot of wear on it, wear and tear, and it's something that just fits my hand and I know what it's going to do more or less. Very warm green here, and we're going to grade this too. We're going to go from a little darker aspect to a little brighter aspect up above. So let's just start by emulating the texture that we see. From the center, we'll work out and leave plenty of spaces, gaps in your brushwork. I find this to be key in sort of capturing the backlit condition. And naturally, as my brush runs out of paint, I get a few more of those broken areas, and I can move out to the periphery where I get a sort of broken quality to that. Let's go a little higher. And a lot of these broken spaces, they will be filled in at some point or joined to others. But for the moment, let's keep it kind of a broken shape, looking for that, size of tree. I'm not picking up a lot of water at this point. I'm mixing in neutral tint and a bit of cadmium yellow. Slightly darker. I'm going to return to this area that's still a little wet. Mix in more of that dark color. And as I'm building out, I'm leaving some little edges, warm, lighter edges to the tree. A sort of haloing. As I look at my painting, I'm starting to naturally see some of the branches present themselves in the painting itself, and I just follow that indication. So because of the texture that we're creating, this tree is already starting to have sort of a shimmer. And that shimmer, it represents to me this backlit condition. That's why I like this brush so much. Gives me that really rough quality that, speaks to the sort of tree that we're creating. As I go higher, I'm adding a little bit more yellow. And focusing on some of those distinct light areas. Very broken through here. And I'm going to purposely, keep it kind of paler through here. I don't want to get too dark as the sun is kind of breaking it up. That's my thought. Right, and down below, a little bit more of the green and neutral tint. Switching to, for the moment, to a smaller mop brush, which is also older, but it has a little bit more of a tip. And I'm just putting some of these stronger darks out towards the edge, small amounts. If I want a little light through here, I can lift it out too. Let's move to a little to a sablette brush here. Keep that lighter. And I'll come with a stronger black, just a hint of yellow. To the base here. Maybe a bit of burnt sienna as well. Taking a little bit of water and paper towel, and I want to lift this just a little bit. Make it a little bit brighter through here. You can always make it darker if need be. Okay. Just extending outward a little bit. Tree is getting the sort of shape that I want. Now I need to build up the color just a little more, a little darker through some of the center section. Using some burnt sienna and neutral tint, which is going into a green that's pretty wet. Mostly around this center area. So it's probably a little hard to see on your screen because of the glare and just the darkness of the color. But as that starts to dry, it's going to fade into the green a little bit and darken the lower section so that I have a clear transition, dark to a lighter aspect up above. Some dry brush branches. also good. Okay. I'm just taking a little water to lighten some of this dark through here too. So what I'd like to do is make the branch darker below. And as it rises, it's getting paler, 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 as the sun starts to dissolve the dark. Oh, we're getting close to that, so. Tree is feeling pretty well done. I'm going to extend the tips of the branches to get a finish to those before I move on. Especially on the last little tips can have a little strength of dark here and there. Variety, variety. Inside some of these wet areas, I'm adding a touch of dark also. So that the leaves or the tree itself appears to have sort of a halo. Strongest concentration of color right here at the bottom. So we're spending a lot of time to finish the tree here. Put some finish to it. And part of that is so that we can balance the rest of the painting against the tree. Okay. Concentrating the light through here. All right, let's move away from this for the moment. Let's think about this area down below. So we have a nice shadow falling over the grass from the tree. Really reinforces this idea that it's backlit and that shadow is being cast across the road, even finding its way onto a section of grass through here. We're going to use some of our blue to create this shadow. Let's mix that up now. I'm going to take some of the cobalt blue, mixing it into these leftovers. A little bit of orange with that. So we're going to be mixing sort of a cooler gray. Looks warm now. We'll add a little lavender, a little more blue, more lavender. I like that. Even a bit of ultramarine in here. Mix it up well. Very bluish green type of color. It's okay. And let's extend that, make a little pure blue color over here in case we want to add that. Here we go, something like that. Okay, and I'm going to just paint the shadow across these grasses here and across the road. And I want sort of a soft transition through here. So I'm just going to start with a little bit of water. These kind of denote the tops of the grass right through here. The rest of it I'm going to apply onto dry paper. Okay. Here we go. and then carry it up into the wet area that I've already created, so it's going to dissolve a little bit. I'm going to add a bit more blue while this is wet through here. This brush again is great for that texture. All the way down, all the way down. Some of that blue across the road into the stroke that we've already created. That's enough, that's enough. And do I want to make any adjustment to this color while it's still wet? I'm using a small brush now. Maybe a few more lines through here for texture, as well as here. It's going to dissolve, but leave a nice trace of the color. I'm going to extend that up into the grass here a little bit. Again, this is a good brush for this sort of application because the bristles are kind of broken and just leaves a few random marks. So there's a nice connection tonally, really creating a nice center of interest through here. Let's extend. I'm using a smaller brush now. Going back to my same mixture, there's really no need to, we can vary that. Let's put a little more orange, for example, in this mixture. And we'll start to build out some of the edge of the road here. Some dry brush. Take the color out and Okay. And let's grow these now into some fence posts. We'll use a little bit of burnt sienna into our mixture. And for example, we see a nice line coming across, becoming a fence post. Another one. This fence post going a little different direction. I'm purposely using a brush that is broken. I'm trying to keep that as sort of a theme in today's painting. Broken brush strokes, broken edges. And as this recedes, we still see it, but it's getting a little fainter. We'll put another. As it fades away. We have an area that's sort of overly green, still kind of wet here, so I'm putting in some of this brown also, just to make it a little more varied. I left a yellow there, and I'm going to keep it there a while longer. It may eventually be taken out. Okay, pretty good. Stay here until we're, relatively happy with what we have. Then we'll move on. Now we have to reinforce our idea from the right-hand side. Break. Let's keep it very weak. We'll start over here on the side that I want it to be a little darker. I'm going to make it just a little bluer. I don't want it to be too similar to this color. So let's let's just make it weaker so more of the underpainting comes through. Very weak. And let's just start to build this up. As I get close to the foliage, I'm leaving that halo. So that it's going to appear to glow a little bit. And I'm just going to build this up to the top of the mountain. And the mountain has a few little trees up there as well. Kind of a slope. Good. Smaller brush. Bring this down. And let's go just a little darker on the right-hand side. Bring in some of these leftovers here. Like that. Don't like that. We don't need that. Okay. Again, I want to get some of those nice highlights. That looks pretty good. A little more, just a little darker. Okay, this is a little lower. I do like the gray. Wondering if I should make it slightly. Let's put in a few strokes. Dry into wet. A little bit of green, a little bit of lavender. Let's put one stroke just to see how it looks. As though we want some trees over here. A little darker. Yeah, you can put a little of that back here. Distant trees. So we're using all of our techniques in this particular painting. As it moves to the left, I'm going to diminish that so that there's almost nothing there. All right, I don't want to get too fussy. Let's do just a little bit of that. On the left side, just a little tiny touch of color over there, very diluted. Also aimed at sort of catching the lights that are around the bottom part of the tree. some small adjustments. Okay. Okay. Okay, I'm going to add just a few trees here. Slightly darker on the left side. Okay, and then we let it dry. And I'm going to put a few highlights into it. First, I want to darken the fencing, and I need for this to just dry a little bit. restating the fence post. We're just going to push back against all of that. Let's see, let's put this one here. We can paint a little negative painting, the space between here, to, in essence, kind of describe the fence as it enters into this area. Extend this up into the tree. Some final darks in our focal point, focal area. Burnt sienna, a little bit of neutral tint, a little bit of ultramarine blue. And like I said, carry that up into some parts of our lower tree. One last dark through there. And I'm even going to carry it a little further into the fence. And into the edging along the road. And we can always, if we want, if we need some extra highlights in the foliage, we can always return with a little jaune brilliant, small brush. So we want to highlight on top of the fence. Or anywhere for that matter, we can add a little highlight. And I want to, if I'm going to use the highlights, which I like it, and this Jaune Brilliant works because it's got that yellow base, I would use them in this area where my focal area is. To give a little more, well, definition, but also sense of luminosity to all of this. Even the stray touch of light works well. Okay. Well, I think that's good enough for this week. And I learned a lot from doing that tonal study that I was able to bring into this piece. It's a good reason to, when you embark on a new project, really consider doing that sort of tonal study. Yeah, that's good enough. We will leave it. You can imagine we could do the same thing with some figures walking through here. Surround them with that same sort of bright light. Creating that effect that the sun is just, starting to dip below the horizon, and we're getting this last wash of this golden light that pervades everything.